everyone, Jeri Bellini here. Welcome to my studio. And it's a gloomy day, and so I've got my table moved in front of my sliding glass doors to get some natural light so that I can make a few videos for you guys because it's supposed to rain for 4 days. Anyway, why is she wearing a coat in the house? I'm not cold, but today's video I'm going to share with you how I recycle clothing. And in particular, I'm going to be cutting up a man's wool jacket. And I am so sorry that I didn't put that jacket on to do this, but it's already cut up. Anyway, I go to this thrift store, and it's my favorite thrift store in the whole world. Well, one of two. I have two favorite thrift stores. This one it's like a strip mall, and they've got furniture, they've got a bookstore, they've got knickknacks, they've got clothing. I'm trying to think of what else. And they probably have another one. There's like 5 or 6 stores in this strip mall. And then at the very end of the strip mall is a store where everything goes to die. So if they don't sell it in those other stores, it goes into this store, and there's a bunch of tables, and the clothing is piled way up high, and I should take a picture next time I go. It's quite a distance from my house, so I don't get to go that often. But they sell the clothes by the pound. Yeah. So whatever doesn't sell in the regular thrift store, they throw it in there. And then I'm not quite sure what they do with it after that if it doesn't sell there. Anyway, I got this wonderful man's wool gray jacket, 100% wool, and it's a nice, not too thick, not too thin jacket. It was perfect. It was retailing in the store for $16, and I got it for, I think, $2.99 because it's by the pound, and it didn't weigh that much for some weird reason. Anyway, I got this coat there too. And it's a lovely coat. It's got like a velvet or something on the cuffs, and it's got a velvet lining on the inside of the hood. And it's a really nice coat, but it is way too big for me. And it does have a few worn spots on it, little holes here and there. And yeah, so I bought it at the same place. And I think this one's, it's really long. I can't get back far enough. It goes down to the floor. This one was about $4, I think, $3 or $4. And it was retailing, because sometimes they leave the tags on them. It was retailing for $25 in the store. I don't know why nobody bought it. All right, it does have these big shoulder pads in there, and they are, I don't think they're real popular anymore, but you can always take them out. Anyhow, I love that thrift store. So today we're going to be taking apart a man's wool coat and also a woman's wool skirt. Now the skirt, the wool on that is just a little bit thinner than the coat, but when I'm finished taking them apart, I'm going to felt them in the washing machine. And I thought you would enjoy that. This is the time of year that you can get these items really cheap, because you know summer's coming and people are wearing summer clothes, so all the thrift stores are getting rid of all the winter things. So I would get out there now and see if you can't get a bargain. If you don't have something that they charge by the pound, I'm sure they'll mark it down. This other thrift store that I love so much, what they do, because they don't have one of these by the pound things, they mark everything down to 99 cents. And then after a week of that, it's 49 cents. Yeah, you heard me, 49 cents. So you can get all kinds of wonderful things there when they're switching seasons. All right, I'm going to take this coat off and we're going to get started with our video. And I hope you enjoy it. We'll see you when I'm finished. There's a few things I do before deconstructing clothing that you can't wash first. I hang my wool coats outside in the sun for a few hours. I also wear a face mask when ripping the items apart. It does stir up a lot of dust. And whenever possible, I will do this outside. let's get started. I'm going to try a voiceover for this video. So here's the jacket, and the first thing I'm going to do is remove the buttons. And now I'm going to remove the lining. And I did edit out a lot of things that would just drive you crazy if you had to sit through the whole video and watch. But I think you'll be able to figure out from what I left behind. So I'm using two tools, a seam ripper and a pair of sharp scissors. So you just poke a little hole in the lining to get your scissors in there to get started, and then I'm just going to cut around the outside perimeter of the lining. So I'm just showing you that, there's a lining in the sleeve too, so we'll get to that in a second. So I got all the way around. It really only took me a few minutes. And once I got that last cut, I see that it's really attached by just a few little strings here and there, and you can see I just pulled it apart. So now we're going to look into the sleeve, and the sleeve is attached with a few little tabs, and you see I just cut those real easy. But the bottom of the sleeve is attached to the bottom of the cuff, so I'm going to turn it inside out and do the same thing that I did with the bottom of the jacket and the lining. See? So I'm just going to poke a little hole and trim around to get that out. And I don't want to spend a hideous amount of time on this jacket, so generally what I do is if there's lining stuck to the bottom seam or something, I just cut it off. I don't throw it out though. I use those little strips of seamed pieces in my slow stitching. If you watched my Scrappy Patch video. Now there's the lining, and I will use that. In fact, I have a project I'm working on right now that I could use that gray. So there's the inside of the jacket. I turned it inside out and laid it on the table so you could get a good look at it. And I'm going to work on the pocket next, but we can see that there's interfacing in there. And sometimes the interfacing is just stitched in, and sometimes it is glued in. It's heat based interfacing where it's ironed on. So this is ironed on, but it's also kind of loose. So we'll get back to that in a second. But the pocket, I kind of was wondering, how is this pocket attached? And you can't really see. So I'm just going to start to cut it. I'm going to use a seam ripper and try to rip it. So that's what I always try, the seam ripper first and give it a little start, and then I'll try to rip the seams open, because oftentimes you can do that and it really doesn't affect the fabric in a negative way. So this one was a little stuck, which pockets usually are, because they're usually tacked a couple times because they get a lot of wear and tear with your hands in there. So in a minute it's going to come loose, and yeah, I'll wait till we get that off, and then I'll get back to the interfacing. So I see there's another little piece of wool in there that I'm going to try to salvage, but I will not salvage the pockets themselves. All right, so once that comes off, it's easy peasy. So let me just get back to the interfacing. I think I have a minute to tell you about that. If your interfacing is stuck inside the jacket, you can reheat it. So iron on top of it, put like something down on top of the interfacing, like a towel or a piece of Teflon ironing mat, and heat it up, and then try to rip it off right away. Sometimes it comes out in one piece, and other times it's a nightmare. So, all right, now I'm going to start opening up anything that's keeping me from ripping the panels of the actual coat apart. So there, I opened that up and I looked at the outside edge of the jacket, and as soon as I get that out, you'll see it. Nope, you won't see it. I guess I'm not going to turn it over again. So the outside edge of the jacket has, oh, we're going to see it in another clip, has a little lining. So right now I can see that the, there we are. It has a double stitch along the edge, and I would never try to get that out. So I'm just going to take a scissor and cut that off as a whole piece, and I'll use that for something. I have a lot of projects going on at once, and so I have a lot of uses for all this stuff. So I'm looking at the buttonholes, and of course I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do with those buttonholes, but I'm getting ready to cut that piece off. So it's thick, so it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. Make sure you have a sharp pair of scissors, and I'm just going to cut right on the inside of the stitching line so that I'll have a long strip, and I can use that in my mixed media art. I have a piece of collage art I'm doing with all textiles. I'll have to show it to you sometime, and I'll definitely use it in that. So now I just stopped right there because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with the collar yet. And before I go to the collar, I'm trying to decide about these buttonholes. So I decided to cut out little rectangles, and once I cut this first one out, I thought, oh, these are really cute. They almost look like closed eyes. Yeah, don't they? So I definitely am saving those. So they're all cut out now. And there's only that little tiny thread is holding that piece on, and there's the interfacing. I'm pretty pleased with the way this is coming apart so far. So now I decide I'm going to do the collar. And I'm usually leaving the collar intact. I don't know why. You could cut the collar apart too, and you could, get a lot of wool out of that, but I usually leave it intact until I know exactly what I want to do with it. So there's I don't know what you call that, see where the label is? I think it's a facing of the collar up at the top. So I always keep the labels. Not everybody has any use for the labels, but I love the labels. And I also am eyeballing that loop. Looks really interesting. So now I decided to kind of go in between the coat and that facing and just cut that piece off. And yes, there I go. And I really like that loop. So I'm trying to be really careful. I'm going, which way should I cut the loop? No, I don't want to ruin the collar. And what do I want to do? I don't want to wreck the loop. So I went on the left side of the loop into the facing. Yep, so there I am at the end. There's the collar. Came off really nice. And as I said, oh, there it is. I thought I took it off already. I'm taking it off now. As I said, I'm not really sure what I'll do with it, but I'll just set it aside for now. I try not to spend too much time when I'm taking these coats apart because, there's a lot to it, and I want to get them felted, and I want to use the fabric. And if it takes like hours to do it, you won't want to do it. It won't be worth it. So this coat took me about an hour. All right, the collar's off. That's flopping around. I see I must have missed a string or something there. And once that comes off, yep, that piece is separate. So I'll save the interfacing generally for the last thing that I do, but I'm going to show you here in the video how it comes off. You just have to peel it off, and like I said, sometimes it comes off good and sometimes it doesn't. If it gets stuck in the seam, so you can see along the very edge is where the coat was stitched, sometimes I'll just cut that edge off, and I will keep the strip. All right, now we're going to do the sleeves. So there was a little shoulder pad in there, and it is like quilt batting. So you could save that if you want to, but I would definitely wash it. You could use it for a funky patch. So now I'm just going to find a little hole, make a little hole with my seam ripper, and watch. I just pull. Yep, there we go. Got the sleeve out. I just pulled on it and came out. So now we're left with just the body of the jacket. The sleeves are gone. Everything's gone on the inside, and I just have the jacket itself to take apart. And this is such an easy thing to do. Now the pockets, where the pockets were, is a little bit of extra stitching. I just cut around that, but I just go to the bottom. I use my seam ripper or a scissor, and I just start pulling the seams open. So I always pull first, and if it doesn't pull, then I'll cut. Right there, there's that extra stitching, so it's going to require a couple extra minutes to get that out. And I'm going to show you what I'm finding on the inside of that pocket. See how it's folded over? And once I get the seam open, I can easily take my scissor and just go, see, all the way up and just trim that off. So I do that for every seam. And then of course the shoulder, that was easy. So now I'm really at the easy part and we're almost done. So I just pulled all these pieces apart, just doing what I showed you with the seam ripper, just like that. And we're done. And there's the jacket. Now it's time to felt your coat. I put mine in a washing machine, just enough hot water to cover it, a little bit of soap, let it agitate for a minute, and then I turn it off and let it sit and soak for a couple of hours. I'll come back, I'll finish running the cycle, and then I do rinse it again. Once you're finished in the washing machine, you toss it in the dryer, and I would watch it, keep your eye on it, check it after 10 minutes, and when it's dry, remove it. And there you are, you're all finished, and you have this wonderful felted fabric. Recycled wool skirt. So here we are, there's the skirt. It's beautiful purple, and it's a very nice weight. It's not as heavy as the coat, but it'll be very useful in my stitching projects. All right, so I'm just checking it out right now and turning it inside out. And I don't know, something funky with the lining. It didn't go all the way down to the bottom, but that's the first thing I do is cut the lining off. That might be why it didn't sell in the thrift store. So I'm just using my nipper. Skirts are really easy to take apart. So I'm just doing a little bit of fast forwarding for you. And there it is. And I will use that lining for sure. So now I'm going to take the zipper out. And so I'm just opening up the waistband a little bit so that I can get the zipper out. I am going to leave the waistband intact. If you've watched some of my other videos, I generally will use pieces of a waistband in my slow stitching. So this was a little bit of a bugger to get out. But there you go. And it's out. So let's see. Next, as soon as I get that out, yep, I'm going to address the waistband, and I'm just going to cut that with my scissor just below the stitching. So I'm going to keep the entire waistband intact, and I will likely use those loops, the belt loops, for something. That's what I usually do. I'll cut up little pieces of it and put pieces of it on my slow stitching projects. And yep, it's off. A skirt doesn't take very long to take apart. So if you're a little afraid of doing the deconstructing of some clothing, start with a skirt. So now I'm just going to start opening up the seams, and yep, that would be the first one, is where the zipper was. And I rip if I can. So if I come across resistance and it won't rip, I'll just use my seam ripper to get it started, and then it usually just rips right open. But once in a while on a piece of clothing, there are like extra stitches at points where, you know, it's important. So like at pocket points, there will be extra stitching. Here on the bottom of this hem, there was a little extra stitching. So you might have to use a seam ripper. Got that apart, yeah. So now we're ready to do the pocket. A lot of times pockets will have interfacing ironed into them, but this one does not. So I'm pointing out the top stitching here. I do not try to take those stitches out. I will just cut that off. It takes too much time, and it's got a really deep crease in it. You probably can't use that little piece of fabric anyway, so just cut it off. Don't leave it on before you felt the item in the washing machine, because it might restrict the felting process. So make sure you cut off all those top stitched edges, or if you really want to, you can rip them apart, but I don't do that. There, I got 4 pockets out of it. I didn't show you me doing the other side. I'm trying to give you a thumbs up. I couldn't figure out which way to do it. So there's the top stitching. I'm just going to cut that off. You'll see in a second. Most of this, you know, you can figure it out as you go along. I just wanted to show you how simple it is to do it. Yeah, I'll just throw that little tiny sliver out. You could try to save it though and use it for something. I guess I just never have tried that. All right, so now we're ready for the hem. This is really going quickly. So I'm going to use the seam ripper, and the hem is really just tacked on every so often. So that was, I just flipped it around because I'm right-handed and it was easier for me to do it that way. So yeah, I just took that out. Now I have this beautiful big piece of skirt. Look at it, it's gorgeous. And what did it take us? 5 minutes? Not even. I'm very happy with everything that came from this skirt. I got 4 pocket pieces, and I got 2 back pieces on either side of the zipper, and then I got this huge piece from the front. I also got a zipper and a waistband. And I even have a use for the lining, so I am going to keep that. And do launder the pieces the way I told you to launder the coat. Wash it on hot water, let it soak, rinse it twice, and then put it in the dryer for a couple minutes. And thank you so much for watching, and keep moving. Just play, no rules, and don't forget to be grateful for something today. See you next Friday.